Okay, so we'll start our lecture. This lecture is regarding the introduction of DBMS, and we have gone for a few concepts yesterday. That is, what is data? We have said that data is an important part or important thing for any organization. So it is a main resource for the institute or organization. Based on this data, the organization or institute can make decisions. Now this data can be stored in different forms in the computer. So if you talk about computer system, if you want to store the data, there are different ways to store the data. A data can be a single bit, or it can be a huge records, huge database also. Okay, so millions of records can be stored in the computer, as well as a single bit can be treated as a data. Now, typically the data can be organized in following thing. It can be stored in these different formats. What one? The first one is bit, then fields, then records, files, database. So one can say that data is stored in bits. Somebody may say that the data can be stored in fields, or somebody says that data is present in the records. Normally we say data is present in some files, and if you group the related files, then it creates a database. So we have gone for yesterday. What is bit? Bit is the smallest unit of data representation that can store either 0 or 1. So it's a binary 0 and 1, not decimal. We know that every data is stored in terms of binary in the computer system. So the smallest data, that is 0 of binary, can be stored in a single bit. Okay, you can store 0 or 1 in a bit. Now group of 8 bits make a byte. This is fundamental, and 1 byte is generally used to store 1 character, alphabets, special symbols, likewise. So 1 byte is used to store a special character. Now if you combine a group of characters, then it creates a field. If you group the characters, then that data is treated as field. Obviously this group of characters has some meaning. For example, if you write down student name is a field, so student name is nothing but a group of characters, collection of alphabets. Roll number, it is a collection of digits. Okay, or it may be collection of characters and digits. If you talk about seat numbers, exam seat number, they may start with NAB, something like that. Okay, then these group of characters or digit can be treated, or they are treated as a field. These fields are also representing the attribute of an entity. Very firstly, entity, any real world object, any real world thing. It may be a person like student, employee. Okay, it may be a place like school, college, hospital. Okay, it may be an event. Okay, it may be an object like car, maybe building, or any machine. Okay, so these all objects, real world thing, are called as entities. Student, employee, car. Okay, these are entities, and information about these entities, like if you consider a student entity, student name, roll number, class, date of birth, this is the information about that entity, which is called as attribute. So entity is real thing about which we store the data, and whatever data we store about that entity are called as attributes. Okay, like student is entity, the data about student is student name, roll number, class. These are the attributes. These attributes are represented by group of characters or group of digits or combination of digits and character, and it is called as a field. Next, what is the record? Record is nothing but collection of attributes of a specific entity. If you consider student entity, roll number, student name, class, marks, these are all attributes or entities, fields related to entity student. Okay, so if you store these attributes or fields regarding one entity together, it is called as record. Record is a collection of attributes of an entity. We can say record is a collection of fields also. Okay, a record consists of fields where each field describes an attribute of the entity, where each field describes the attribute of an entity. Okay, so here one should understand that record is a collection of fields, or it may be treated as record is a collection of attributes. Okay, and these attributes generally belong to a specific entity. For example, if you talk about book entity, book ID, book name, author, title, these are the attributes. So collection of these attributes will be a record. Then file, collection of related record. So if you talk about student record, it will create a student file. If you talk about attendance record, it will create an attendance file. If you talk about the marks records that store the marks of the student, then it can be treated as a result. Okay? So file is a collection of related records, and generally the files are named after the application that uses it. If there is application for storing the information of book, then that file may be a book.txt or book dot some kind of data. Okay. Now primary key, we have said that every file contains records that contain fields. So primary key is a field whose value uniquely identifies a record in the data file. So if you talk about this particular record, roll number, student name, class, mark, then in this particular record, roll number is a field that is having a unique value for all the records. Every record will have a unique value. No two record will have roll number same. Okay. So here roll number will be the primary key. So primary key is a field whose value uniquely identifies the record. What is database? Database is a collection of logically related files and records. If you store the records of student regarding admission, there will be admission file that contain admission record. There will be a library file that contain information of student regarding library. There will be account file that may store the information of the student regarding the fees paid. So all these files, accounts, libraries, attendance, test, all these related files, if you group together, then it will create a student database or college database. A database provides common gateway for many applications. So if you create one database, then that database will be used by different applications: admission program, admission application, attendance application, library application, and this database provide a common platform, common way to access these records. Generally, these records are stored in the forms of tables. In database, the data is stored in terms of tables. Tables means rows and columns. Okay. Data is managed by a special software which is called as database management system. So if you talk about database, database is a collection of related files, and to manage these files, suppose user want to access a specific record, then that record should be retrieved, can be searched and retrieved and given to the user. If another program wants information about the account, fees paid, then database will load that data from the hard disk and will give it to that particular application. So these all things like retrieving the record, if user want to insert the data into the files, then this database will allow to insert the data. But all these operations will be carried out by a special software which is called as database management system. So DBMS, the full form is database management system. It's a software. Okay, it is a software. It comes under actually system software little bit, and it is also application software also. So we generally call it it is a software that handles all the activities regarding the database. We will see what are the features of DBMS. The data stored in database is independent of application program that uses it. Okay, we'll see. We just will go with these points. Later on I will explain what I mean by this independent from application program. Also, database is independent of secondary storage. That means where it is stored, it doesn't matter. Okay. Now this is our today's lecture. What is our today's lecture? That what was the option before the particular DBMS? What options we were having before the DBMS? That is important. Now before DBMS, there was a file processing system in computer. A concept of file processing system was present. Okay, that is generally called as traditional file processing system. Okay. Now let us consider, to understand this file processing system, let us consider that we want to deal with the programs to store the college record. Okay, so we have seen that there is a attendance record, there are some admission record, there are some library records. So if we talk about that particular software that is used to store and manipulate the college record or student records, then just go for these things. In traditional file processing system, that means before DBMS, there was a program which is useful maybe which is written for the admission data entry. Okay, whenever a student goes for admission, this program is opened. This program accepts the student name, maybe assign a roll number, maybe class, date of birth. So all the information about the student is inputted through a program. Okay, admission data entry program, and then whatever data is entered by the user, that program accepts that data and store that data in a separate file called a student data file. See what I am saying? Before DBMS, there was a traditional file processing system. Means generally the programs were written to accept the information. For example, this program is written for admission purpose. It accepts the information about the student details and store it in a special student data file. Similarly, there might be another program for entering the attendance of the student. So there is a program written for taking the attendance of the student. The information about the attendance, student name, roll number, class, attendance is accepted by this program, and that will be stored in a separate file. So there is a program for admission that accepts the data of admission, store it in student file. There is a program for accepting attendance information that will be stored in a separate file. Similarly, there is another program for storing the library information of the student, library data entry program. Okay, that accepts the information of the student regarding library, student name, roll number, class, library card number, books issued. That information will be stored by this program in a separate file, in a library data file. So in traditional file processing system, there were multiple programs for multiple tasks. Every program was inputting or accepting the different information, and that program was having a separate file. Every program was having a separate file. Okay, and that file is used to store that information. What I am saying, just listen. In traditional programming or traditional file processing, there were different programs. Those programs were inputting the data, and the data was present or stored in a separate file which is only specifically designed for this application. So student data file is designed or created only for this particular application. Attendance data file is designed or can be used by only attendance data entry program. Library data file can be used by library program only. So every program was having its own separate file to store the data. This is a file processing system that was used before. Programs were written and every program was having a specific file. This file will not be accessible by other programs, or the structure of the program is only known to the particular structure of the file is only known to the particular program. Okay, so every program was having its own separate file. This is a concept of file processing system. But this file processing systems, which uses every separate file by every program, was having a lot of limitations and issues. We call it as a disadvantages of file system. Okay, so if you have got this particular concept, file processing system, in which different programs were there, these programs were inputting the data and storing in the separate file which is specifically designed for that program only. So what are the issues regarding this file processing? For example, the data used to store in the file is generally stored in this format. If you look at this particular bottom rectangle, if you consider the data, if you consider the record of a student, so roll number, maybe for example roll number 1 is there, name of the student AAA, then the class BCA first year, then the marks 400. So this is the first record of the particular student. Another record is stored sequentially, second BBB BCA third year 460 is the mark, then the third record. So in the data file which is used in the file processing system, data was stored sequentially in the file. Okay, so this format create the issues regarding processing the data. So this is a specific diagram that tells the file processing system. A program is written for a specific task. It accepts the data and store that data in a separate file which is designed only for this program. Okay, now what are the issues? Each program is written for a specific task. Okay, so if you need to modify some different tasks, if you want to perform some different tasks, then this program was not supporting, because this program, for example, is only used to store the data in the file. then this program cannot work differently. If you want some different data, okay, some different task, then you need to modify this program, then only then you can work for that particular output. So every program was written for a specific task. That program was working fine for that task, but if user wants some different task to perform, a little bit different task, then the program should be modified for the same purpose. Program accept information and store it in a file. This is a file processing system. This program accept the information, store it in a file. Every program uses a separate file to store its data. This is what we call it as a file processing system. Files may have different structure for same data. Now this is a one of the issue. Okay. Now for example, this particular data is file is for admission purpose. So in admission, we have seen. We'll go to the previous file here. This data, student data file, contain student name, roll number, class. This attendance file is also consisting of student name, roll number, class. Okay. In library also we are having student name, roll number, and class. But it might happen that this program is written by a programmer, and this program, other program is written by other programmer. Third program is maybe written by third programmer. So it might happen that this programmer may use different structure for the student name. Somebody may use a student name up to 20 character. Another program, while storing the information, may use student name up to 50 characters. Roll number may be character, somebody may use it integer. Class name again can have different formats. So it was the major issue that every program was designed by a separate programmer and it was having a separate file. So the file structure may be different for the same data. Student data file contains student name, roll number, class. Attendance data file contains same information. Library also contains same information. But it might happen that these three files may be having different structure, data type or size for the storage of student name, roll number and name. So here that was the problem, that if you are using file processing system, separate file was used for every program, and this file may have different structure for the same name. For example, name. Some program may use a full name, one variable to store a full name of the student. Another program may use different three variables to store the name of the student. It may have a first name separate variable, field name, middle name separate variable, last name separate variable. So same information, student name, one is using a full name variable and another is using three different variables to store that particular name. So same data but different structure may be present in different file processing. Okay. The data type and size may be different. The data type used for full name, maybe roll number, or the size 20 character, 50 character, that may be different in the different files, and that create the issues. Okay. File processing system, again every program was having its own file. This file was not shareable. That means suppose other program want to get the data from the admission, then it was not possible because that program was written only for that particular task. Library program cannot access the information present in admission file because this admission file was present or created only for the admission program. So data sharing was difficult because maybe different structure of the file, different data sizes, so data was not easily shared between the program. So these are some issues regarding the file processing system. Okay, just I am revising shortly. What is file processing system? In traditionally, the programs were written, every program was having a separate file for its storage. Okay, so program was accepting the data and the data was stored in a separate file. Okay, and even though data is same for three different programs, admission, attendance, library, even the data is same, student name, roll number, class, it might happen that due to different programmer, the structure of the file may be different or the data type or size for these particular fields may be different. Every program define its own variable, so they may be different. So it creates the problem, data cannot be shared easily. Okay, if you want to modify some use of the program, then it was difficult, you have to modify the program for the same task. So these are some issues regarding the file processing system, okay, which was used traditionally. Now these are some disadvantages we already discussed, but technically we are going to see these words. What are the disadvantages of file system? Data redundancy. Now listen carefully. Data redundancy is one of the term which is mostly used in the database management system. What is data redundancy? Duplication of data. What do you mean by data redundancy? Duplication of data in different files. For example, student name, roll number, class. We have seen that this data was present in admission file, it was present in the attendance file, it was present in the library file also. The same data is present in 3 different files. If you talk about that example, we have seen data redundancy means duplication of data. This was the major problem of file system, traditional file system. The same data is present in different files, and this redundancy, duplication of same data, create lots of problems. So just have this word with you. Data redundancy means duplication of data. For example, student name, roll number, class is present in all the 3 files: admission file, attendance file, and library file also. Data redundancy, duplication of data. Now, due to this data redundancy, there are chances of having data inconsistency. Now consider a situation: the student has taken the admission, so student name, class is provided to the admission program, and that data is stored in that particular admission file. Okay, student has taken the admission program take the information of admitted student and store in an admission file. Now when that student goes to the library, the library program accepts the same information. So same information is stored in library file also, in the attendance file also. But later on, that student make correction in the name in the admission file. By mistake, his name was not entered properly. So student asks the correction in the name to the office. So office program, admission program make the changes in its file. Admission program make the changes in its own file, but rest of the 2 files, library and attendance, they may have the same old name. So in one file the name is corrected, in other two files the names were not corrected. Okay, so it creates the data inconsistency, mismatched data. One file says that the name of the student is so and so, other 2 files says that the name or the spelling of the student name is so and so. So data may be different. It may happen that due to separate files and separate program, the data may not be updated in different copies of the same data. So data redundancy means duplication of data present in different files create data inconsistency. Data may get updated partially. Data may get updated in one file and rest of the files will be having the same old data. So such type of problem is called as data inconsistency. Just listen carefully, these are the words: data redundancy, duplication of data. Means same data may be present at multiple locations. It creates data inconsistency. One copy is get updated, one file is get updated for new data, but the rest of the files will contain same old data. So it will create a data inconsistency. Data access not flexible. Similarly, suppose you have created a program in traditional file system which is storing the data or which is retrieving the data from a file. So that program was designed only for that specific task, to retrieve the data. So a program is designed to retrieve, to select the record of the student, the entire record of the student. Entire record means all the fields. Suppose a program is written to select or to read entire record from a file of a student. So it is okay for entire record, but later on I come to know that our management demand that we want only 3 fields. We don't want all the fields from that record. Then that program has to be modified. That program was not designed for specific fields. It was designed for entire field. So it works for entire field very well. But if you want some selected field, then you have to modify that program. So data access was not flexible. The new requirements, if the same data is to be retrieved in different format, then the program has to be modified for that thing. So this was one of the advantage of file system. Similarly, limited data sharing, different structures were there. So program was not having access to the other file, or even though the access is same, the program structure and the different file structure may not match. Data integrity. Different type of constraint cannot be applied if a new type of constraint. Constraint means some kind of binding. For example, if you consist a bank account. Consider a bank account. Okay, we know that in bank account there should be a minimum balance. Okay, so initially the balance was 500 rupees every, or maybe 1000 rupees. Every account must not have a balance less than 1000 rupees. That was the initial rule or the constraint on that particular. So when the program was designed, it was designed with the constraint or binding of 1000 rupees minimum balance. But later on the Reserve Bank has changed the constraint or rule. Now it says that the balance should not be less than 3000 rupees. So again, to accommodate new constraint or new binding, again we have to modify the program. Okay, that was happening in the file system. So data integrity issue was also there. This is also one of the disadvantage of file system. Atomicity problem. Atomicity is one of the you can say biggest task in the database management system. What it says? It simply says that if there is a transaction means if you are processing something, if you are manipulating the records, okay, then that transaction or that operation of processing the record must be performed 100%, or if there is any error, then there should not be any type of operation or transaction at all. What I am saying, atomicity means if you perform any transaction, if you update any record, if you perform some kind of deletion, or if you perform some kind of updation, okay, then that updation, deletion, insertion must be 100% successful, okay, or if there is any problem, then no operation should be performed. So atomicity simply says that the transaction may be or must be 0% or 100% successful. There should not be 50%, 60% successful. That means if you are performing some task, then task should be performed completely. Partial transactions are not allowed. So this was the again one of the issue in the file system. Okay, so these issues must be known to you: data redundancy, duplication of data, data inconsistency, mismatched data, multiple copies having the same data, one is updated, others are not updated, data access is not flexible. If the same data is to be retrieved in different way, the program was not supporting, you have to modify the program. Limited data sharing, the programs were having a different structure and file were having different structure, so sharing was not easy. Data integrity constraint, the rules that can be modified, but in file system you have to again modify the program. Atomicity, that means if you are performing any task, then it must be performed 100%, or there should not be at all any transaction. Partial transactions are not allowed, 50%, 60%, no. Either it should be 100% or there should not be any transaction. Concurrent access anomalies. Concurrent access means if multiple users are accessing the same data, okay, if multiple users are accessing same data, then there are some problems occur which are called as concurrent access anomaly. Concurrent, simultaneous access, retrieving the data. If multiple users are there and if they are accessing the same data simultaneously, then it is called as concurrent access anomalies. For example, if you are using a bank account and you are transferring the data from one account to another account, then until that operation completes 100%, no other user should able to retrieve the account information. So such type of problems are there which are called as fund transfer. Concurrent access anomalies create when multiple users try to access the same data at the same time. Okay, then it creates the problem. So it may give some you can say non-updated or wrong input to the different users. Okay, so these issues are there with the traditional file system. And last one is security issue. That means in file system we cannot put some kind of binding, or this security issue was handled very poorly. Security issue means that we cannot restrict the user from accessing the data. There was no control in the file system through which we should restrict that who can access the data and what amount of data should be accessed, whether the user should be accessing all the records or some record or part of the record. For example, there is a clerk, okay, so clerk should have access for a specific field. If there is a principal should have access to all the fields. So such type of access restriction, that is security issues, were not easily handled, properly handled in the file system. So this is the concept of file system, and there were some issues regarding this file system, and due to which the DBMS has emerged. Okay, just I am briefly going to revise the thing. What was the concept? Before DBMS, there was a traditional file processing system in which every program was having its own record, own files, which may have same data. Okay, and this data may be stored in different ways, different formats, different structure, data size types. So that create the issues. Okay, and these issues are data redundancy, duplication of data of same, inconsistency, then access is not flexible for new requirements, limited data sharing due to the different file structure, data integrity, you have to modify the program to implement that data integrity constraints, atomicity, that means 100% transaction or there should not be any partial transaction. Concurrent anomalies, if the same data is handled by multiple users at the same time, then it creates some problem. This type of problems, concurrent access anomalies, are not handled by the traditional file system properly. Security issues, which data should be accessed, which user should access, which user should access what type of data. Such type of restrictions were not present in the traditional file system. So I hope you understood the concept of traditional file system.